Boys, welcome back to 30 Teams in 30 Days, where we preview every team's season throughout the month of September. We did the Hawks yesterday. Check out that video if you haven't seen it. But today we're here with the Boston Celtics previewing their 2025 season after their title win last year. But can they go back to back? It's been a little while since we've seen a team go back to back, but can the Celtics be the first team to do it in like 6 years? 7 years, somewhere in that range. It's been a while, but we're going to get into that. We're going to break it all down. But before we do, think about subscribing. It's free, it's easy, and if you don't like the content, you know, always unsubscribe later. That's fine. But without further ado, let's just get into it and talk about Boston. But before we talk about this year, we need to talk about last season, get some context. So in 2024, they went 64-18, good for first place in the Eastern Conference. It felt like they easily could have won 68 or more games. They just kind of stopped trying at the end because the 1 seed was so locked up for weeks before the season ended that they didn't really have to do much to keep that up. But 64 wins, super impressive season. 2 All-Stars in Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They had 3 20-point per game scores with Tatum, Brown, and first-year Celtic Kristaps Porzingis. They won 11 straight games in February, extending into March, and 9 straight shortly after that as well, which all culminated in them winning the 2024 NBA title. I believe they lost 3 games in the playoffs. It was 3 or 4. But it was just a super impressive run from Boston to the title last year. It was the second full season under Joe Mazzulla. He was given a lot of crap in year 1 for how bad he was as a coach, but what he did last year was super impressive. Just a really good season for Joe, and they win the title. They had the best offensive rating for a team in NBA history at 123, and the 4th best net rating ever at plus 11.6, which I believe was only behind 2 Bulls teams and one of those really good Warriors teams. It was a fantastic season for Boston, and I'm not sure people even realized how special that team was. But let's get into their offseason, where there wasn't a whole lot of action. They re-signed a lot of guys, Jayson Tatum, extend Derrick White, Kristaps Porzingis, just get these guys locked in for years to come. KP might have already been signed. But they extended key guys, every one of their starters now making $30 million plus annually. One of the most expensive teams we've ever seen. They lost Oshae Brissett, who is someone who could still come back. He's a free agent, has not signed anywhere else, so Boston is still in the cards, and I liked what I saw from him last year, but as of right now, he is not on this team. Also lost sharpshooter Svi Mikhailuk, but they added Lonnie Walker IV just a couple days ago in a great late season pickup by Brad Stevens, getting him for essentially nothing, like a minimum contract, and a player with a lot of potential upside, only 25 years old, and has been really impressive in stretches when given opportunities. They also added Baylor Shireman with the 30th overall pick in this year's draft. But let's get into the quest to repeat, because like I said, it's been a while. They won the title last season and will start their quest to defend that this year. The last 5 champions have failed to defend their title, with the last repeat champs coming with the Warriors in 2017 to 2018. If you want to say the 2018 Warriors failed to repeat, then it would be the last 6 champions that have failed to do so. Before those teams, it was the Heat in 2012 and 2013, the Lakers in 2009 and 10, and then the Kobe Shaq three-peat in 2000 to 2002, but they've become more and more rare as we've gone throughout time. You just don't see teams run it back as often as they used to, but the Celtics will try to do that. But thanks to the era of parity in the NBA, different champions for 6 to 7 straight years now, it has become increasingly difficult to run it back. But the Celtics could be the team to do that because of how deep and how talented they are, especially at the top, because the starting 5 to me is legitimately one of the best starting 5s we've seen in a long time. And let's get into the starters. Starting off with point guard Jrue Holiday, a 34-year-old lockdown clamps point guard. 12.5 points per game last season, 4.8 assists and 5.5 rebounds. Shot 43% from 3, which is a career high for Jrue. A lot of times in Milwaukee, he was kind of viewed as a bad shooter or someone who could hurt the team with his shooting, but in Boston last season, he was lights out. A two-time All-Star. I think the first one was way back in like 2009 or something like that. And then just a couple of years ago with Milwaukee, he was an All-Star as well. Six-time All-Defense, including last season. He is arguably the best perimeter defender in the league. It is him, Alex Caruso, and another guard that we'll talk about in a second. But just a still very, very good defensive player. Is part of the Celtics point guard by committee approach, as he, Derrick White, and Jayson Tatum often will bring the ball up the floor, sharing the duties of initiating the offense. Jrue is getting a little older now at 34, but the defense is still at an all-defensive level despite that, and he thrived in a more complementary role in Boston. A lot of times he was the second option for Milwaukee, but last season he was consistently the fourth or fifth option in Boston, and he just seemed really comfortable, still made a very big impact despite this, and was just a very positive presence that played a large part in the Celtics finally getting over the top and winning the title. Then you have shooting guard Derrick White, the bald assassin, you want to call him, a 30-year-old super duper role player. He's been called a role player for a long time now, but is kind of the epitome of the best version you can get of that. Derrick White, he's not a star. I wouldn't say he's an all-star. You could say the impact says he might be, but just like way more impact than the numbers, a true winner, and just a guy you want to have on your team. 15 points per game last year, 5.2 assists, and 4.2 rebounds, as well as nearly 40% from deep. 1 steal and 1.2 blocks for 2.2 stocks per game. One of the best shot blocking guards in the league, probably the best. 2-time All-Defense, I believe, the last 2 seasons, and arguably the best perimeter defender in the league as well. Also part of that point guard by committee with Jrue and Tatum. And like I've said, he's just much more impactful than the base numbers show. 15, 5, and 4 isn't bad, but because of all the little things he does, advanced numbers love him, and he just is a much more impactful player than it might look like on the surface, and when you watch the games you can tell. Super interesting about him as well, he can change his game to different levels based on the situation. You'll see nights where he'll go off and look like a star, but other nights where he's just kind of complimentary, blending into the surroundings and just doing the right things without taking over the game, but he has the ability to take over the game, which we saw multiple times last season. Then you have small forward Jaylen Brown, the reigning finals MVP, 27-year-old star forward slash guard, can play the 3 or the 2, even if you're pressed he can play a little 4. 23 points per game last season, 5.5 rebounds and 3.5 assists, also over a steal per game as well. A 3-time All-Star now. I would say it should be more than that, but 3-time All-Star nonetheless. An all defensive level forward. Has really improved his defense year in and year out, and I would say last year was pretty easily the best defensive campaign of his career, and was just clamps. Taking the best wing players on other teams consistently and doing a very good job on them. Was the Finals MVP as well as the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, and despite the fact many people view this as Jayson Tatum's team or that Tatum is the best player, Jaylen Brown was the driving force that won them the title. Depending on the night, he can be the best player on the team or the third best player, but he's going to give you good production nonetheless. Is part of the best duo in the league with him and Tatum. I think is probably the best 1-2 punch right now. And we just saw his best all-around season, in my opinion. The best we've ever seen Jaylen Brown came last year, despite a slight dip in scoring from the season prior, going from 27 points per game in 2023 to 23 last season. A lot of that due to incorporating guys like Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, but that shows how unselfish that JB is. Then we move into Jayson Tatum. Again, the star of this team, a 26-year-old superstar forward, one of the best players in the world today. 27 points per game, 8.1 rebounds, and 5 assists, as well as a steal per game. The shooting was a little better last season at nearly 38% from deep. Still has kind of a hitch in his shot. The added muscle, I think, has kind of hindered the shooting ability that we saw early on in his career, but a good finisher at the rim. The muscle does help there, and even get him in post-up situations, he's done better. A 5-time All-Star and 3 straight first-team All-NBA nominations for Jayson Tatum, has been a top 5 player in the league, at least according to the voters, for the last 3 seasons now. Part of the best duo in the league with Jaylen Brown. He does get a lot of flack online for winning games despite subpar performances. And while you can hate on him for those performances, I don't think you can get mad that he has a great team around him, or the fact that he is able to make an impact despite poor shooting performances, which is actually one of his best attributes. And to me, he's a top 5 to 7-ish player in the NBA. I probably wouldn't put him quite top 5, but I think he's right on the edge of that, and is just a very productive player and one of the best isolation scorers in the league right now. And then the final starter, at least later in the season, because he is dealing with an injury stemming from last playoffs, is center Kristaps Porzingis, 29-year-old unicorn big man, one of the first players to get that unicorn nomination that we see thrown around all the time now. But we had really never seen a 7'3", maybe 7'4" floor spacer and shot blocker like Porzingis to the point when he arrived. 20 points per game last season, one of the best years of his career, 7 rebounds and 2 assists, as well as nearly 2 blocks per game. And the shooting splits for a big are ridiculous: 52% from the field, 38% from deep, and 86% from the line. You shouldn't be able to shoot as well as he does at his height, but he manages to do it anyway. A 1-time All-Star. I would have said he should have been an All-Star last season as well. Didn't get that award, but despite that was still really, really good and super impactful for the Celtics. One of the most unique bigs in the NBA. You just don't see guys at this height able to do this. But injuries do remain a concern year in and year out. You're going to have to hold your breath come playoff time, hope he can stay on the floor, because the team isn't the same level without him. He took the team from elite when he arrived to nearly unstoppable when he's on the floor, just because of the deterrence he provides around the rim and the crazy amount of floor spacing you have from a big man who will pull from 30 feet. It's just something that is extremely valuable in spacing that you pretty much can't get any other way. But let's get into the reserves, because like I said, the starters are phenomenal and one of the best starting lineups we've seen in a long time, but they have a few really key bench guys as well, starting off with Al Horford, who will probably start the season as the starting center, now 38 years old, definitely getting up there, has had a couple stints with the Celtics, and has just been a very impactful guy. Again, his impact going beyond the numbers, similar to Derrick White. 9 points per game last year, 6.5 rebounds and 2.5 assists, 1 block per game, and shot 42% from deep. So not only do they have Porzingis spacing the floor, Horford can get out there as well. A lot of his coming from the corners, while KP likes to shoot from the top of the key. But regardless, just a super value thing to be able to have this much spacing in your lineup. A 5-time All-Star is past that point in his career. He's not going to be an All-Star at this point, but very impactful. Still a winning player despite being 38 years old and nearing the end of his career, but definitely would like to pick up another ring with Boston. He will be relied on heavily early in the season due to Porzingis' injuries, but the wear and tear that could stem from this and the heavy minutes early on could play a bigger role in what he looks like come playoff time. We could see more injuries down the road from Horford. We could just see a tired version of him come playoff time, and that could become an issue because of his age, but he's a good player. He's still a very good player. Kind of a guy you'd probably want around 20 minutes a night. Early in the year, it'll probably be over 30 minutes a night, and we'll see what that does for him later in the year. Then we move to small forward Sam Hauser, a 26-year-old three-point specialist in the most extreme version possible. Almost every shot he takes is a three-point jump shot. 9 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, and 1 assist per game, 42.4% from deep on 6 attempts per game as a bench player is crazy. One of the best shooters in the league today, has the green light from Joe Mazzulla to take shots when he gets in there. A lethal catch and shoot player, not quite as good off the dribble, at least in my opinion, but the catch and shoot numbers are crazy. Has showed flashes of being able to take on a larger role, including a 30-point game last season, as well as 3 other 20-plus point games Sometimes when the stars are struggling, Sam Hauser will step up and take over a game, which is just super fun to watch a bench guy come in and be able to light it up like this. Then you have Lonnie Walker, the new addition, shooting guard Lonnie Walker IV, still only 25 years old despite being in the league for quite some time now. I believe 4 years with the Spurs, 1 year with the Lakers, and 1 year with the Nets. Nearly 10 points per game last season in Brooklyn despite somewhat limited minutes, 2 rebounds and 1.3 assists, as well as 38% from deep, a pretty solid shooter as well. And with Boston's spacing, could easily have a much higher three-point percentage this season. A solid bench scoring punch, just kind of like the prototypical six-man type where you bring him in and he gives you buckets. But double-digit scoring seasons in 2022 and 2023, both over 11 points per game despite the little dip last season. We could see Boston try to unleash him in a little bit of a larger role. Showed flashes of higher scoring ability with the Lakers in 2023. As pre-injury, he was starting and averaging over 20, was putting up really good numbers for them early in that season, but due to injuries and opportunities, we haven't been able to see that again at the same level. But despite that, great late offseason addition by Brad Stevens, getting him in here, and even if he's not really going to drastically change what the outlook for Boston is, he's going to be a contributor, and I love the signing. Lastly, of the reserves I want to talk about is point guard Payton Pritchard, the 26-year-old backup one. Nearly 10 points per game as well, 3.2 rebounds and 3.5 assists per game, 38.5% from deep. And with some of the shot selection he has, it's actually impressive the percentage is as good as it is. Is a microwave scorer, can get hot and score in bunches very quickly. Hit 2 half-court buzzer beaters in the finals, which is crazy. Bring in the specialist for the half-court buzzer beater, and he was hitting them. Showed flashes of higher scoring ability when given opportunity. I believe he has at least one 30-point triple-double, and he might have 2. As well as that 90-point game in the Seattle Pro-Am a couple summers back, which was just crazy to see the level of score that Payton Pritchard is. But it's just a perfect backup point guard, a guy who will give you reliable passing, but also able to get his own shot, can take over the offense a little bit at points, but is the backup for a reason and does a very good job as their backup one. Then let's get into the projected lineup. Again, the starters, if healthy, will be Jrue Holiday, Derrick White, Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, and Kristaps Porzingis, with the bench unit being Payton Pritchard, Lonnie Walker, Sam Hauser, Al Horford, and Xavier Tillman, a good young big as well. And then some other guys that could get minutes would be rookie Baylor Shireman, second-year guy Jordan Walsh, and Luke Cornett, inventor of the Cornett contest, where he just throws both hands up and jumps even if he's 10 feet away. But it does seem to affect the shooter. So, hey, good for him, and I think he can provide valuable minutes and will be a bigger role while Porzingis is out. But now, what can you expect from the Celtics in 2025? On the low end, I think there's a chance they struggle a little bit early on without Porzingis, as well as some championship hangover, and maybe because of that, they finish 3rd or 4th in the Eastern Conference. I don't really see any way they finish lower than that. They're just too talented. It seems unrealistic. But on the high end, they could perform nearly as dominant as last season, or maybe even slightly better, and win the title again. They have that potential. They are likely the favorite to win the title and are definitely the favorite in the Eastern Conference. Could easily see them going back to back. I think they're talented enough to do that, but it's going to be difficult. The coaching in year 3 from Joe Mazzulla could look even better than the jump we saw from him last season, as I just thought overall he was a way better coach in year 2 than year 1, and maybe in year 3 we see continued growth from Mazzulla. Expect at least 2 All-Stars in Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, with 2 potential other All-Star candidates, in Jrue Holiday and Derrick White. I think both have the potential to be named to the All-Star team this season, especially if they're easily in first place again. There's a good chance they could get 3 All-Stars, or maybe be the first team with 4 since those dominant Warriors teams. back in 2018. I think it was the last time a team had 4 All-Stars. But due to Porzingis' injury early in the season, it seems unlikely he'll have played enough games to garner an All-Star selection, but Holiday and White could definitely be in the conversation. Expect another dominant season thanks to one of the best starting 5s in recent memory, as well as good contributors off the bench. They're super good at the top, but they're also deep, which is just a luxury most teams don't have. It is title or bust for Boston this season, as it will be very difficult to keep this team together thanks to all the starters making $30 million plus annually. So at least one of the starters after this year might have to go. Maybe if they run it back, they'll try to get 3 in a row and continue to pay it, but the luxury tax and the first apron will be very difficult. The second apron, will be tough for the Celtics to deal with money-wise as restrictions from the CBA continue to get tougher and tougher. But that's it for the video today. I do think the Celtics can run it back. I have the talent, but they could struggle early on due to Porzingis missing time. It'll take other guys like Horford, Tillman, and even Cornette stepping up to keep them afloat. But to me, they're still pretty easily the best team in the East and arguably the favorite to win it all once again. But thanks for watching. Think about subscribing if you like the content. Let me know your thoughts down below. Watch the Hawks video from yesterday if you haven't. But again, thanks for watching. Have a good one. Peace.